Hey guys, welcome to my channel, or if you've been here for a while, welcome back. If you're new, you might not be aware, but I have taken about a 4-month break from posting any content, and there was a multitude of reasons for that. When I initially took my break back in May, I wasn't anticipating it to be the entire summer, and that's just sort of the way it all shook out. And it wasn't even really about what I wanted, it was really about what I needed. So what I thought I would do today is just apply some makeup and talk about what I've been up to since last May. At that time, if you were following my channel then, you would know that I was doing a weekly series where I would do basically my week in makeup, getting ready for work every morning. I would do a voiceover and sort of give you the ins and outs of what my week had entailed. So if you were following my channel at that time, you may recall that in May I was on the trial list. So for anybody who is new, I am a family lawyer by trade. YouTube is my hobby. This earring is going to drive me to absolute distraction. It keeps getting caught on the lace. It's a very bad combo. Anyways, family lawyer by trade, I had a matter that was scheduled to be going to trial in May. The way it works where I operate out of is you are on a list, and if you get called, you get called, and if you don't, then you have to wait 6 months to try again. So ultimately, that is what happened. My client's matter did not get reached, but it broke me nonetheless. The stress of just being on this list, waiting, wondering, planning, preparing, hoping, stressing, all of that culminated in me becoming very sick once those trial sittings ended and my matter hadn't been reached. So we will leave that at the jumping off start. I'm gonna get started on applying my makeup, or else it won't happen because I'll just keep talking, so that I do not distract myself more so than you, but so that nobody gets distracted. I'm not really going to be talking about the items that I'm applying. I will list them down below in case you're curious about any particular item, but I'm not going to be sharing thoughts on these as we go through. So I also don't really intend to do a lot of like speeding up and editing out and cutting out and all that. I've got a fair amount to talk about, and if you know me, you know that I can fill some time with words. So let's go back to May briefly. As I said, we are on the trial list, so that basically means most of my practice is just kind of on hold at that point, and the stress of it damn near broke me. Now, all throughout 2023, throughout the majority of 2022, if I'm being honest, I was dealing with some very heavy mental health issues. I was very, very anxiety-ridden, dealing with a lot of depression. I lost a lot of friends because one of my coping mechanisms is to just kind of withdraw. I don't engage socially, I don't reach out. I've been largely silent with a lot of my friends, and understandably so, a lot of them have sort of just moved on with their lives, as is fine, as is to be expected. But it all just kind of compiled. And then when that little bit of a snap happened, I guess it was more so the relief of not going to trial than anything. I mean, I am a lawyer, but trial is not a huge part of family law. It's so expensive. And the court system is designed to try to divert people away from trial that I really don't have a lot of trial experience, if I'm being honest. I have a lot of litigation experience. I've argued before courts many, many, many times over the years, but trials, those are a whole different beast, and they are quite rare in the family law sphere. So all that to say, I had a little bit of an awakening in that I didn't want to go through that stress again. Now, my matter is scheduled to go to trial now in November, so it is going to come up, but I have decided, and I have registered, and I will be starting very soon to pursue mediation. So that won't replace my practice. I will still practice as a lawyer. I will still litigate. I will still negotiate separation agreements, marriage contracts, all that kind of thing. But I want to branch out and expand my services to include mediation as well. mediation allows people to basically have some control over the outcome. Whereas if you go to court and you put your matter before a judge, you've got a stranger who is making the decisions that they can make based on the information in front of them. Whereas, again, mediation, you've got the two parties. They know their children. They know the dynamics of their family. They know what their kids' best interests are. They know what their kids need. And so they have a lot more insight and a lot more control over the outcome. And frankly, there really is a greater likelihood that people are going to abide by the terms of an agreement that they reach themselves rather than one that's imposed, because you take the risk going to court that you're going to get an order that nobody wants, and that isn't best for you, but it's based on what the legislation says and how other parties have been treated with similar, though not exactly the same situations. So I had, and I can't remember if I had talked about this back in the spring or not, but I had booked myself a trip to British Columbia. I had done it a couple years ago where I went on my own. Gary's quite happy to stay home with the kids. He doesn't like to travel, so it all works out. But I had booked that for September. So as I'm filming today, it is September 15th. I should be on day 5 of my trip, but here I am, not in British Columbia. Ultimately, I canceled my trip. Well, they had changed my flight, which shifted everything by a couple of days. It wasn't even just changing the hours. They changed like the literal date of when everything departed and returned. And so that just messed up all of my plans. But it was kind of one of those divine intervention moments, because ultimately what I did was just took them up on their offer of a full refund, got that. And then I used those funds to purchase a mediation course. So that is starting up soon. I'm very excited about it. To become fully certified as a mediator here in Ontario, you require 100 hours of practical experience after completing these courses. And I have lined up with a senior lawyer here in town, perhaps not to get all of those hours, because that would be a huge endeavor on her part, but to at least get a portion of them. And so that is also something that I'm very excited about. This is a lawyer that I have a lot of respect for, that has an excellent reputation in her field, and I know that I can learn a lot from her, not only just in terms of the application of the law, but also how to mediate and how to guide people through that. So I am nervous to return to a school-like setting. I haven't been in school in many years, but I'm also really excited, and I'm really looking forward to what this next chapter can bring for me. I could probably wait to mention this to talk about what has happened in September so far, but I'll throw it in now because natural segues don't always arise. My law firm was actually voted in a local newspaper Reader's Choice Award as the best law firm in our city, and we just found that out a few days ago. And while that's small potatoes in the grand scheme, it really means a lot. It's very validating. I have gone through a lot of changes this year with our firm. I have a new business partner. We have a new firm name. We've hired 2 new associate lawyers. So there has been a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of stress that comes with that. And to be voted based on reputation as the city's best law firm, not even just best family law firm, but just law firm, period, it's a huge honor. And I'm so impressed with us, and I'm so proud of my team and of the reputation that they have established in their community. I'm part of that. I'm proud of myself as well, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So then let's talk about June, because June was interesting. So I have been having health issues. Now, if you're new to this channel, you probably are not aware. I underwent gastric bypass surgery 4 years ago. So I've lost 120 pounds in the last 4 years. Well, I lost that pretty much in the first year and a half. I've maintained it. Just celebrated my 4-year anniversary at the end of August, and I'm still down all of that. So it's been very successful. But there have been some changes, and absorption of nutrients is definitely one of those things that has been negatively impacted by the surgery. And I knew that going into it, I knew that was a big risk. So last fall, I started to notice some differences in my body. So the corners of my mouth were constantly cracking. My fingernails were constantly peeling to the point where particularly my thumbnails actually hurt because they were so thin, because they just kept peeling off. I was no longer able to tolerate any spice in my food at all, to the point where like pizza sauce, just plain regular tomato pizza sauce, was too hot for me. It was too spicy. So these are all things that are just not normal for me. And again, you may or may not be aware, I took up triathlon as some sort of sadistic hobby last year. And I was, of course, trying to train again for this year. And I was finding that when I was out running, I was getting really dizzy. When I was on my bike, I just couldn't breathe properly. Like, it just couldn't get a full breath. And then for days after, my chest, like above my heart, would be achy. Not a sharp pain, but just, it felt like I'd pulled a muscle, but only on that one side. And so come June, I frankly had just had enough. And so I got a requisition to get some blood work done, and I went in on whatever day it was in the afternoon and got my blood work done. By about 10 o'clock the next morning, the doctor who had written the prescription or the requisition for me had emailed me and called me twice. So by the time I managed to connect with him, I was already like, what is going on? Because, I mean, our healthcare system here in Canada is pretty good, but it's not to the point where anybody really reaches out to be proactive to tell you your results. They usually just wait for you to see them and then book an appointment to review them if necessary, things like that. So the fact that this guy was blowing up my phone and emailing me had me a little alarmed. And turns out, with good reason, he had my results, obviously, and told me under no uncertain circumstances that I was to go to the hospital immediately. Needed to get to the ER because what he suspected they were going to do was administer a blood transfusion. My hemoglobin was basically, I think the words he said were in the toilet. I think that was the medical terminology he used. And the word critical came up quite a few times. It was critically low. If I say my hemoglobin was 78, I don't know if that really means anything to anybody, but apparently it meant a lot to the medical staff that I dealt with that day, because even the triage nurse, when I told her, hey, I did blood work and the doctor told me that I should come in right away because my hemoglobin is 78, her eyebrows shot up. I didn't even get to sit in the triage waiting area. They moved me directly into the next waiting area and then came and pulled me to sit me in the fishbowl outside of the nurse's station while they expedited my blood results. I was freaking out because while our system is free here in Canada, it is not known for expediting anything. So the fact that they were, like, they'd left the IV shunt in my arm, they wouldn't let me out of their sight, and they were expediting things, I was quite concerned. So I met with the ER doc shortly thereafter, and my hemoglobin had come up to about 82. I don't know how it varied from one day to the next, but such is the human body. So she said, I think that you would definitely stand to benefit from a blood transfusion, but because you've been having these symptoms basically for the better part of a year, she was concerned that it would overload my system and that I would then have a whole host of other issues to worry about. So what she did was gave me an IV infusion of iron, because not only was my hemoglobin in the toilet, but my iron levels were as well. It turns out that I have some sort of genetic condition, disorder, anomaly, I don't know what to call it, and I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. If I can Google it, I will put it up on the screen, but anyways, basically, my body just does not produce enough hemoglobin, and therefore it is this like spiral effect that then trickles down to the iron levels as well. And basically it just means that there's a very limited amount of oxygen floating around my body. The blood that I have is basically useless. That's sort of what it comes down to. So I will now be working with a hematologist. I have 3 more IV infusions scheduled starting in October, 1 each week. So it's kind of a bummer because they're 3 hours each, and so I have to sit there for 3 hours every week while they inject this iron into me. But that is meant to basically get me back up to where I should be, and then we can establish a plan for maintaining the iron levels. So all that to say, I had been feeling really crappy for a really long time, and I should have done something about it much earlier because the fix was iron. I also now have iron horse pills. They want me to take 300 milligrams of iron before. If you have ever taken an iron supplement, you know how horrible they are on the system. They are so harsh on the system. So taking 300 milligrams, it's not fun. It's not fun. At any rate, I am very much looking forward to these iron infusions, and I suspect I'm going to feel like the bionic woman come November. That did not help me in July though. So July I had a sprint triathlon at a place where I've never done that course before. And it turns out it was very hilly, particularly on the bike. So let me just back it up and give you a little bit of information. A sprint distance triathlon is nowhere near an Ironman. When people think triathlon, they think Ironman. No, it's nowhere near that. So the swim is 750 meters, the bike is 20 kilometers, and the run is 5K. I did the swim. I was very impressed with it. It was a river swim, so something I hadn't done before, but I didn't have any panic. I had a fairly decent time. I felt good throughout. That was great. And then I got onto the bike course and it kicked my ass. So this was only about 2 weeks after I'd had the iron infusion, and I could not breathe. I could not catch my breath. I was also dealing with a bit of a lingering cold as well. Barry and I both got sick in June, and we could not shake it. And I did what's called DNFing. So I managed to get back to transition after the bike. I was the last one on the bike course, and in fact, I'd been on the bike course for so long that they were starting to shut it down by the time I got back. And I could not stop coughing. I was dizzy. I was lightheaded and stumbling around. I was retching because I was coughing so much. So I made the tricky and difficult decision to DNF, did not finish. So I didn't even bother going out on the bike or on the run leg because I knew there was no way I could do it. The run course was also very hilly, and I just knew that I was risking my health if I did it. I knew that I would faint at some point, could risk injuring myself, could have tripped somebody else. Like, you just never know. So I DNF'd. Also in July though, we went camping as a family. This was probably about a week or so after the triathlon that I didn't finish. And where we went, there was this beautiful, huge lake. And I suffered a lot of panic last year doing the swim in open water. And it was something that I hadn't expected because I've never been afraid of the water. I've always been a swimmer, never competitive, never super fast or efficient in the water, but I'm just somebody who loves being in the water. Like, I love taking baths, I love hot tubs, I love swimming, I love lazy rivers. Like, I just love being in the water. So when I experienced panic while swimming in open water last year, I just didn't understand it. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why it was happening, and that fueled my panic even more. So this summer, a big focus for me has been controlling that, and I've been doing that by practicing. The more I get out into the lake and swim, the more confidence I build in myself. So while we were camping, I had taken my wetsuit with me, and the one day I did, I think it was, if it wasn't 2 kilometers, it was 2.5. I'd have to go back through my Strava to take a look. I can't remember exactly how far I went, but it was the longest I had ever done until 2 days later when I swam 4 kilometers. That is full Ironman distance. It's actually a tiny bit more. And so I was so excited by that and so happy that I've basically conquered this open water panic that I signed up for an open water swim race of 2.5 kilometers. So all throughout this time, I'm also doing a ton of training on the bike. I'm running, I've got my treadmill and my stationary bike beside each other. I even did a 100-kilometer cycle for cancer research. I raised $1,000 for that. So that was supposed to be like an outdoor ride, but that day it was super rainy, and it actually happened to fall on the same day that my son Bennett did his first triathlon. Bennett is 6, and 6-year-old triathlons are hilarious. It is so freaking cute. It was amazing. He had a great time, smiled start to finish, and I opted to do my charity ride virtually. So I got my bike set up with Zwift, and I rode 100 kilometers in that day. My goal was to complete it within 6 hours, and I did it in about 4 hours and 40 minutes, and I impressed the crap out of myself doing that. So then that brings us to the triathlon that was scheduled for the end of August. I had done this triathlon course last year. It's in a town called Wasaga Beach. And my goal this year was to do it 10 minutes faster than I did last year. As it turns out, I did it 10 minutes slower. But here's the thing with triathlon. There are so many variables, particularly with respect to weather, that it is really hard to compare the results from one race to the next, even though it's the same course. So with this year's, there had been a thunderstorm the day before. And so even very early in the morning, it wasn't quite certain whether the swim portion would go forward. I arrived there and I attended the pre-race meeting. I had taken a look at the lake, and there were a lot of whitecaps. Like, it was wavy. It looked scary. And at the pre-race meeting, they did actually give us the option to not swim and to turn our event into a duathlon. So there was already a duathlon occurring, and we had the option to switch over to that event rather than doing swim, bike, run. We would do run, bike, run. I don't really love running. I want to be a runner so badly. I want to be a runner, but like my hip and my knee are both very much opposed. So I decided to do the swim, and I wanted the challenge because of the previous fears that I've had with open water. This was the kind of condition that I 100% would not have done last year. Like, I would not have even considered doing the swim last year. This year, I just wanted to prove to myself that the panic was well and truly done. And I will say, I did that swim in only 1 minute slower than I did last year. Now, keep in mind, I did take a wave to the face and inhaled the whole thing. So at one point, I did stop in the water and had to like cough and sputter and get the water out of my lungs. Not a great feeling, but I didn't panic. I did it. There were other people on the swim course, though, who were literally yelling for help. So everywhere I went, when I'd bring my head up out of the water, I would hear people yelling for help. And the motorized safety boats, so there's always kayaks out there, but not even the kayaks, it was the motorized boats were coming to rescue people because the waves were frankly so intense. And I swam off course because it was very difficult to see where the exit to the swim route was because the waves were coming in, and because it was black with like everything in the background, it was just really hard to see. If they'd made it like a lime green or yellow or something so that it stood out and differentiated, it would have been a lot better. So I did swim off course a little bit, and I had thought that I'd be able to basically just like surf my way back in, but because of the waves, and I don't know anything about wave structure or aquatics, but it felt like an undertow. Like as I was swimming forward, I kept getting pulled back. So I had to swim harder to get anywhere. So regardless, it took me only 1 minute less. So my swimming lessons have definitely been helpful. Then I got onto the bike course. The bike course it's like a 10 kilometer out and back. The 10 kilometers out there, there's a little bit of an incline for pretty much the entire thing, a couple little hills, but nothing major, but enough that it feels like a grind doing those 10K out. made even worse this year because it was into a freaking headwind, like the strongest headwind I've ever encountered. Turns out, back in transition, it was a full-on downpour. When I get back into transition, I'm like, what the frick happened? All of my stuff completely soaked. So thankfully I missed the rain, but the bike itself, like I was out on that course about 15, 20 minutes longer this year than I was last year. And then I had to do the run and my hip was not happy about it, but I got it done. And I will say, I've never cried at the end of an event. You know, you feel all these feelings, especially I find triathlon, there's just such a relief, such a sense of accomplishment, such like just a mixed bag of emotions. And this year, I think just because everything was so much harder than it was last year on the same course, when Barry hugged me at the end of it, I just sobbed. I full on shaking, crying, sobbed. Don't really know why. I think it was just the relief and the pride at having done it, but also the pain in my hip because that was pretty intense. So yeah, I'm glad that it's done, but I don't know where that leaves me for next year. I don't know if I want to continue with triathlon or shift my focus. And that was a question that I had for myself at that time. And I thought, I'm not going to make any big decisions because I now have this open water swim race and I've never done just a swim race before, or even just a single sport race of any sort. Just getting like the mind, a lot of this endurance stuff, you can train your body, but it's the mind that's really going to hold you back. So I started thinking to myself, like, what really is the worst thing that could happen doing this swim race? Like, what is it that I'm afraid of, that I'm thinking of just not even starting? It's not even a matter of like DNFing. It's just like, I'm thinking about just not even going. And in that process, I was like, okay, well, drowning, that's the worst that could happen. But it's not. It's the worst for everybody else. But once I've reached the point where I've drowned, my problems are kind of over. So really, the worst thing that could happen is almost drowning. So, and I say that rather flippantly, but like, it's kind of true to be honest. So then I had to start thinking like, okay, what do I do if I feel like I might drown? And so I just basically came up with a plan. Like I knew I was going to be wearing my wetsuit. I knew that it was buoyant. I knew I would have, it's called like a pull buoy or swim buoy. It's like an inflatable bag, basically like a dry bag. And then it acts like a flotation device so that boats can see you, so that like I can carry my phone and my puffer in it and I can hug it and it floats. Like it basically acts like a little buoy to keep me up. So I was like, okay, if I start feeling like things are not going right, I can just roll onto my back, hold my buoy, rest, regroup, return to the race. So that was kind of my mantra throughout the whole thing. And I was like, and then the only other worst thing that can happen is I come in last, and that's kind of what I expect to do anyways. So anything else is gravy. So off we go to the race. And the first person I see there is my cousin. I had posted about doing this race on Facebook, and it's at a place called Welland, which is near where I grew up in St. Catharines, just sort of a stone's throw from Niagara Falls, maybe about like 20 minutes outside of it. And she showed up to surprise me, which was lovely. And of course, my family was there. One of Barry's and my really good long-term friends was there with her daughter, and everybody was just there to support. It just meant the world to me, honestly, just seeing like they don't care if I win. They don't care if I come in dead last. They're just there to offer support. And before I knew it, the race had started. And it was a bit of a washing machine. You know what? I'm going to do this part off camera because I can't talk and do this. There. Eyes are lined. So, the race starts. It's a bit of a washing machine. Tons of people. Well, like 24 people. Not exactly tons, but 24 people all in one start. And eventually, of course, we all spread out. And I'm just swimming my own race. That's all I can do. I'm not trying to keep up with everybody. Regardless, my goal was to do it in less than an hour. Wherever that put me in the standings was where it was going to put me. I didn't really care. I just wanted to do an hour or under. And so I just put my head down. I listened in my head to everything that my coach had been teaching me. Check your head, check the position of your shoulders, check your rotation, keep your feet up near the surface, reach, pull, follow through. And before I knew it, I was hitting the mat at the finish line. And my time was 53 minutes, 59 seconds. 7 minutes faster than I had ever done it. About. Is that right? 9 minutes. 9 minutes faster than I had ever done. The reason I'm saying 7 is because the race ended up being 2,400 meters instead of 25. My average pace was 2 minutes and 16 seconds per 100 meters. So even if we add those two, I was still well under the 100 or the hour-long mark, and I was still 7 minutes faster than I had ever been. And I give full credit to my swim coach for that, because she has really taken my swimming to the next level. And I have never been so proud of myself or so elated than when I saw what my time was. And I came in 10th out of 14 women and 18 out of 24 swimmers in total. I blew myself away. That has really kind of helped me solidify in my mind that while I still want to do the Wasaga Beach Triathlon one more time because I want to get it done in less than 2 hours next year, I don't know that I want to do a ton more triathlon. I really want to focus on the swimming, and I really want to do more of these open water races, because swimming, it just, I don't know, there's something about it. It's hard, and there are times when it's very scary, but it's just so rewarding, and I feel so free when I do it. I'm spending so much time just thinking about my hand position, my head when I'm breathing, my rotation in my body, that I'm not thinking about anything else. And I'm really just dialed in to my physical being and how I'm approaching the swim. And it just, all the other shit just falls away. Like worrying about work. I don't have time to do that while I'm swimming. I don't have to think about, the laundry that needs to be done and the dishes and the this and the that. It's just time to just focus on performance and focus on just how my muscles are moving, and just keep pushing forward and keep trying to reach new goals and just seeing what it is that I'm capable of. And I want to do more of that next year. So I'm going to continue working with my coach throughout the winter. And I am just so excited to see where I can get next year. Because when I did the first time I did 2,500 meters, I couldn't believe I'd actually swam the distance, let alone anything about the time. But the fact that I'm now swimming that time so much faster, like I went from about a 2 minute 45 seconds for every 100 meters to now 2 minutes 16 seconds, just in the course of a few months. God only knows where I'll be next year. If I could break the 2 minute mark, I would feel incredibly accomplished. But that's going to take a lot of work, but I'm willing to do the work. So all that to say, it's been quite the distraction from makeup and all things YouTube. I haven't been posting on my health channel either, because as I'm training, like the last thing I'm thinking about is getting a GoPro out to film myself training, or trying to get Barry to take clips of me during these triathlons. Like I'm so focused on what I'm doing that I'm not worried about what aspects of it I can use for content, if that makes sense. So I'll probably go back to that channel at some point, but right now it feels like the time to come back to this channel. And, I'm entering off season. Things that are arriving at Sephora are now starting to pique my interest all summer. New releases, there has not been much that I've been interested in at all. I've bought very little makeup all summer. But I'm starting to feel that spark again. I'm starting to feel that pull towards creativity. It's not very colorful, but this is the most colorful makeup I have done in literally months. I have been living in my neutral era right now, and I'm quite happy there. But I thought I'd shake it up for today. This needs just a tiny bit more blending as I'm looking at it. So that is sort of what my life has been the last few months. I could go on and on about work, new associates, all that kind of thing, but suffice it to say, I mean, it's been a hell of a summer. There have been so many urgent matters, and by urgent, I mean like parents taking their children to another country and refusing to return them, so we have to do like Hague Convention type applications to get these children returned. It's been a nightmare. Just sort of one week after the next, there's some sort of crisis going on between either like on one of my matters or one of my other lawyers' matters. And there's been times where it's sort of all hands on deck. We're all just kind of helping each other out and doing the best we can. So again, the fact that we have received that accolade of being best lawyer in town, again, I don't know if that really means anything, but it means something to me. So there we have it. I filled the time. Yay. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch all of this. If there has been any major success in your life or major challenge that you have taken on and goals you've accomplished, anything like that, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Otherwise, I think my next video is going to be an eye swatch video, I believe. If not, it's going to be an empties because I have got a lot of them. Like I said, I haven't bought a lot of makeup, and I've been using up some of the products in my collection, which I feel really good about. So that is on the horizon. No promises as to when those videos will come because I am just going to be doing a low-key approach to this. I am not going to put pressure on myself. I want this channel to remain fun. I want it to be an escape for me. With all that said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. I have not said that in 4 months, so be a decent human being. Bye for now.